Sometimes a game just barely misses the mark. Gall Force Eternal Story has got a lot of neat ideas to it. It is the most technically complex shoot-'em-up on a Nintendo system to this point. Unfortunately, there's a lot of little things that wind up dragging the whole game down, which makes it an interesting game, but not one that reaches greatness. Gall Force Eternal Story has a bit of a twisty history behind it. It originally started out as a photo comic in the magazine Model Graphics. And that's model like little figurines that you build, not people displaying fashion. The story was told in pictures of models that you'd go out, buy, and build yourself. On the basis of that, an hour-long animated featurette was made. And that was an enormous hit, big enough that even though it was released on home video first, they gave it a theatrical release. That popularity got Gall Force attention internationally, putting it on US store shelves in the mid-80s in that tiny section labeled Japanimation. And of course, there were games based on it, which is why I'm here. The title Gall Force is actually a messed up bit of English that has become canonized. There's actually something that's a bit of a running theme for Gall Force, since it uses a lot of English, even back to the original comic, and very little of it is accurate. The title is supposed to be Gal Force, as in a force of women. The game doesn't really follow the plot of the animation or the comic. There's still a space war between a race of sexy women and alien monsters, and the characters in the game are all of those same characters. By the way, the alien language in this introduction is straight from the cartoon and is, once more, very rough English. It's supposed to just be a straight character substitution, but it can be a bit hard to tell. The goal of the game is to assemble your crew and then defeat the alien fleet. And to do that, you fight your way through a series of shoot-'em-up stages, and when you defeat a boss, a new crew member may join you. You start with just one crew member, and as you acquire more, their faces will appear at the bottom of the screen. As you're flying around, the A button will fire the gun, and there is no auto-fire here. You'll either have to mash hard, or use some kind of auto-fire controller. There are 13 stages in Gall Force, and you do not have to do them in a linear order. You start out fighting close to the surface of a planet, but if you can complete that stage, you'll see a series of launch paths. Each of these will have a number of stars on them, and that will tell you which stage they'll take you to. Run into one of those and you'll launch into a space section. Make your way through these, and you'll be confronted by an enemy battleship. While the battleships have different looks, the principle is the same for all of them. They'll briefly open up their core for just a second, and you need to fire as many shots as you can into it. Take down the battleship, and one of your allies will join your crew. But if you're destroyed while fighting the battleship, then you advance to the next planet stage. That becomes a problem because the only way to beat the game is to rescue all of the crew. If you defeat the last boss and don't have a full crew, then the game loops and you have to go through the whole thing all over again. This also becomes a problem if you're not keeping track of who you rescued and fly into the wrong launcher. But that's a problem that's easy to avoid, since the 1 star takes you to the first crew member, 2 stars take you to the second crew member, and so on. Your ship has a bit of a complex damage system. The hitbox for where you can get hurt is actually a lot smaller than the sprite. It's similar to bullet hell shooters, though where they can hit you isn't as clearly defined. It takes a lot of bullets to do any damage to you, and you'll see the ship smoke before anything happens. A collision with another ship, on the other hand, can knock one of the... I want to call them nacelles, but this isn't Star Trek. I'll just say pods. A collision with an enemy ship will knock one of the pods off of yours. That can reduce your firepower, if you've built up at all, and once both are knocked off, then the next collision will take you out. Getting destroyed makes you lose all of your power-ups, which is a bigger problem than it usually is in shooters. If you can complete a stage, then you get fully healed, including recovering any pods that you've lost. That brings me to the power-ups, and there's a problem here because power-ups are extremely rare. There's also a wide variety of them, and they are effectively randomized. Or at least, I didn't have them appear consistently in the same spots. Gall Force loves to throw huge swarms of enemies at you, and being reduced to the basic level can put you into a hole that's pretty much impossible to climb out of. Most of the power-ups are a letter A with some kind of marking on it. I don't know why they chose the letter A, but that's what they went with. The A with the arrow is the weapon power-up. There's 5 levels of power-ups here, and they affect everything including your crew members. The A with the burst around it will let you play with full power and fully recover your health. The fire power wears off after about 10 seconds though. A in a circle is invincibility. That should be a familiar one. And an A with lines coming out the bottom is a speed up. Absolutely vital, since without any speed power-ups, your ship moves like a boat. And since the game likes to overwhelm you, you're going to have a really hard time dodging things. Besides that, there's the star that destroys all enemies on the screen, a 1-up, which is a 1-up, and a watch that puts everything into slow motion for a short time. The last power-up looks like an angel, and it gives you an additional mech that you can launch using one of your crew members' abilities. The crew members all change what you can do dramatically, and you change which crew member is in control by hitting select until their face is flashing and then pressing the B button. You start with Robbie, and she just fires straight ahead. She's the basic option. Next is Pony, who's probably the most confusing of them. If you select her and hit B, a mech will be launched from the ship, and it flies back and forth, left and right on the screen, firing continuously. It'll just vanish when time runs out, and then you'll have to launch another one using up some of those resources that you've been picking up. It's useful, but not so useful that it makes sense to restrict it like that, especially when she's the only crew member who behaves like this. Next is Patty, who changes the weapon to a laser that fires out from the sides. The laser shots penetrate things, which can be helpful, but it is kind of limiting. Luffy is similar to Patty, since she changes the weapon to a laser, but she fires straight ahead, with parallel shots coming from the pods. Luffy is by far the most effective of the crew members, which really makes getting her first a priority. Arusa also changes the weapons to lasers, but she changes them to be rear firing, which doesn't help you locate things ahead of you, but this is a game that loves throwing things at you from behind. And I wasn't able to get the last 2. Ruby gives you a spread shot, and Caddy increases the number of bullets that your ship can take. There's a bit of a strange difficulty curve to Gall Force. You'll either have smooth sailing for quite a while, or you'll just get wrecked by enemies coming at you from all directions continuously. A real challenge here is the level design, both due to the extremely aggressive enemy placement, and how many stages fill the ground with destructible terrain that blocks your shots. That's another reason to use a rapid-fire controller. Gall Force reminds me a lot of another shoot-'em-up that HAL created, Uchu Keibitai SDF. That Famicom game would be released 4 years after this, but in terms of how it plays, it really feels like a sequel to Gall Force. This also wasn't the only Gall Force game that HAL made. They also released a shoot-'em-up on the MSX almost simultaneous with this. The MSX game uses a lot of the same graphics, but it plays quite a bit differently. As for the Famicom Disk System version, I like how you get permanent power-ups from collecting the crew, but the lack of power-ups anywhere else becomes a real issue. It's even harder to climb out of the hole after you've been defeated in Gall Force than it is in Konami's shoot-'em-ups. And it feels like the level design could have used another pass. Once you've lost control over the screen, you're not going to be able to recover it, even if you are fully powered up. Gall Force is an interesting game. It's better than it seems at first glance, but it still falls short of greatness.